Hello and welcome to the Terrace Scottish Football Podcast. My name is Craig Telfer, and right this very second I am joined by my close associate Shaughan McGuigan.
Hello there.
And you know what happens when the Britney Spears and Jason Allen Alexander of the Terrace get together? That's right, we're going to be childhood friends, marry in a Las Vegas chapel, and then have the marriage annulled 55 hours later with one of us, and I won't say which one, citing they lack understanding of their actions.
But what must have happened in those 55 hours? Because that's a real pivot, isn't it? Let's get married. Let's get divorced.
Because I can understand if you wake up the next day and think, "Oh my God, I really shouldn't have done that." But that's 2 days. So I don't know. Was the first day absolutely fantastic? The second day not as good, and then by midway through the third, you're just like, this really isn't working out for either party.
You're right. I suppose what happened on day two, that must have been that's the real crux of the matter.
Yeah.
I suppose we'll presumably never get to the bottom of it, unfortunately.
I mean, I think that Britney Spears in her recent life has more documented the guardianship, the conservatorship, I think it was, that she was under her father. That's drawn a lot more scrutiny. But if HBO are listening, and I can't imagine why they wouldn't, we want to find out what happened in those 55 hours. That's what we want to call it, like, boom, Britney, 55 hours. That's a sort of gritty reimagining of what happened to her marriage with Jason Allen Alexander.
Like Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy in 48 hours, but slightly different.
Yes, slightly more just irritated with one another more than anything else. But
they were very irritated by each other across the course of two films, I suppose.
I've never seen it. What's the premise?
Would recommend both. So if I remember correctly, Nick Nolte is a kind of grizzled cop, and for some reason that totally escapes me, bearing in mind the films were very much the 80s and maybe early 90s for the follow-up, he has to get Eddie Murphy out of jail to assist him on some kind of tracking down a criminal, and Eddie Murphy is the only person that can help for some reason. But again, it's like kind of yin and yang. They don't like each other, but ultimately they form a bond. I suppose the opposite happened with Britney Spears and her beau.
Yeah, I'd much rather compare us to the Nick Nolte and Eddie Murphy of the Terrace, actually. But then you'd be like, well, why would they ever hang out than somebody who needs to have seen 55 hours to work it out? Everyone knows who Britney Spears is, perhaps a bit less sure of Jason Allen Alexander, but nevertheless, I mean, they spent 55 hours together, and I reckon we could spend 55 hours together and get through tons of lower league football. And this podcast might need to be 55 hours long for us to catch up with all the great stuff that happened over the past 7 days. Woohoo! I think this is like a patented 3-game podcast, Shaughan, but it's one that comes with a lot of DVD extras.
Yes, yeah, very much so.
We'll be looking at, once again, the title race at the Championship, basically the same thing that we did last week, although with more hilarity this time. How Alloa Athletic have taken control in the top 4 battle in League One. And we'll look and say a big congratulations to Peterhead, the League 2 champions. And we'll touch on quite a lot happened in League 2 as well over the weekend, so we'll talk a bit about that. But Shaughan, are you well? Is everything okay?
I'm very well. How are you?
Terrific. I think we should probably start by saying that Shaughan and I were out with each other on Saturday night, and we had an amazing time at the Edinburgh City Player of the Year event. We'd been invited by Ali Moncrief, a voice who you might have heard in this podcast talking about the Citizens. And I'm a bit loath to say this, but it was as a thank you for the coverage that we've given the club over the course of the season. And I got to say, that's not why you do it. Edinburgh City have been given positive coverage, because they've been excellent over the course of the campaign. But nevertheless, delighted to have been asked along. And it was an absolutely superb time. I won a signed Connor Young jersey from his hat-trick against Peterhead in November. I had to take that on the train back to Glasgow with me and walk from some Queen Street station to Denniston. So that was a challenge. But the highlight, Shaughan, the absolute highlight of the evening, well, certainly was for me. I don't know what it was for you. We got to meet Michael McIndoe.
Oh, absolutely extraordinary. It was interesting. I thought there was a couple of interesting things in terms of evening, and you're right. Thank you so much to Alan Moncrief. I had a ball as well. Absolutely loved it. Really good to be involved and kind of get a snapshot, I suppose, of where the club is at this moment in time. Because it was interesting going into it. Ali said something along the lines of they've tried to organise a couple of evenings, like kind of celebratory evenings in the past, and ultimately there wasn't the interest, so they had to cancel it. Michael McIndoe said something when he was chatting to the room, and he said it's quite interesting that for the last 2 years, I think he said the Player of the Year awards have been in, he might have said a pub and in an Indian restaurant. So obviously very much smaller events.
Mm-hmm.
But on Saturday you had a kind of sold out, every seat taken in the Scotsman Hotel. So it was like a very grand occasion. And it was just interesting to see how the club, it feels like the club is on the up. There is a momentum about it and a kind of zeitgeist about it at this moment in time. I don't know how to describe it, but certainly from everybody that you speak to, there is a world of difference between where the club was and where it is now. And the other thing that was interesting, and you've touched on it there, see, just being in Michael McIndoe's company. So he blethered to us for a couple of times, but you could tell with the players and the fans, there's definitely a kind of reverence there. I think up until Saturday, we watch his post-game stuff, and that itself is good, and we think that's class. But see, when you're in his company, I don't know how to describe it. It's like, I found him quite an intoxicating individual, and the best the best way to think about how he got my buy-in is there was a point where, and I'm probably paraphrasing here, but ultimately he said to us that no matter what league Edinburgh City are in next season, they'll win that division. even if they win the playoffs, they'll win League One next season. Now, when you think about that, like Peterhead have won League Two because they're the best team in it. But if you'd said to me, do you think Peterhead can win League One next season? I would say no. However, when Michael McIndoe was standing next to us and saying, yeah, whatever league we're in next season, we'll win it, I was just nodding my head and saying, aye, you're probably right enough. So it just has an effect on people. That's incredible.
He was exactly how I imagined him to be. And my reaction towards him was exactly how I imagined it to be as well, where I think he is so confident in himself. It probably verges, if you were obviously very keen on him, I think if you didn't like him, it would verge in arrogance and you find him distasteful. He is absolutely off his head. He's so sure of himself, but he is utterly, utterly compelling. And I found him, you know what, I wish that you could have met, I could have spent more time with him in a different format where you could have just sat down with him and just chatted away for an hour just about his outlook and how he finds the game. But just, I was hanging off his every word. And just talking to the Edinburgh fans, like Pryor, like Ali, and the rest of the guys that we met there, they've completely bought into as well, and it's easy to see why. And it's just, you could say he's absolutely full of it, but he's backed up. He's backed up over the course of the season. And just his plans for next year, that he's talking about having a couple of players that he's bought in, one who he really fancies apparently, which is apparently this guy is like the second coming of like Gabriel Batistuta, if that's apparently if he comes over with stuff like that. So it was a brilliant night, and he's phenomenal company. And to repeat the point, you say nice things about football teams because they do well, and that's why Edinburgh have had so much praise, because I've been to see them each time. 5 times I've been to see them. Each time they've been really, really good, really impressive, and every time I've been entertained and, more importantly, confounded. I think that was the first thing that I said when we were speaking to him, was that at the beginning of the campaign I had you guys pegged for bottom of the table, and I got it completely wrong. And just talking to him about his ideas, how he sees the game. He's brought in ideas from other sports and so on that he's tried to bring in, some successfully, some not so successfully, but just learning and trying to make this team better. And you can completely understand, like, I think I'd asked him at one point, what are your own aspirations in the game? But I can't see him, certainly at the moment, going anywhere else, because I think that club, he can do pretty much anything he wants with that football club, and take it in the direction that he wants it to go in. And I think it's a really exciting time to be an Edinburgh fan. Yeah,
I think he is central and essential to everything that Edinburgh has done in the last 12 months or whatever, and I suppose everything that they are looking to do. And even if he was to leave tomorrow, I don't know where he would leave, because you're right, he wouldn't be able to have the kind of overview and overhaul of any club that he's going to. I suppose it's comparable to a degree to what Martindale has maybe done at Livingston, without knowing quite as much about it, I suppose. But I think if anybody else had that squad of players, and I think they do have a talented squad of players, I don't think they would have been as successful or would be as successful without McIndoe at the helm. It was fascinating to just see it kind of up close on Saturday. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, me too. It was a great night, and meeting Michael was amazing, because that's something we've been speaking about all season. Just in fact, even going back to the Montrose interview that he gave about 18 months ago, find him then thinking, God, what's this dude all about? and then to actually like being part of the Edinburgh's journey as to where they've gone, and almost as that we've gone through it as well over the podcast over the season, to actually get the chance to speak to him was fantastic. But it's not just about getting to spend time with him. Like Ali was brilliant company as well. Jason Jarvis, who was at our table as well, seems a lovely young man, and he's really switched on about football. Josh Grigor, he was there, got a wee chance to chat to him and his man dad. Quinn Mitchell, it's good to actually get a chance to speak to him when I can remember it. So that's a bonus. Big Mark Weir, lovely big guy as well.
Yep.
And then another highlight for me, you got to buy Eden Lynch a pint. Eden Lynch, of course, one of the players who won the league with Stennismuir last season, always a hero to me. And it was just then capping it by winning that signed jersey. And it was great. And Michael McIndoe's partner, Anne, she's lovely as well. So it was just a really, really good night. And I think that everyone who had been there would have just come away thinking, I'm really chuffed to be supporting this club at the moment.
Yeah, agreed. I don't know if I don't know if you're the same as me, but I still get excited about being around footballers.
Me too.
And I know that you spent like 2 or 3 weeks in the summer with the Scottish international team. I mean, you literally spent a fortnight or whatever it was with the elite. The best of the best when it comes to Scottish football. Regardless, I still got a wee bit excited when it comes to guys for Edinburgh City.
You know,
I really enjoyed it.
It was the bit where we'd gone downstairs in the hotel, and we were coming around the staircase, and we were sort of hanging back a wee because we weren't 100% sure where to go, and we were basically like hanging about with Ali because he was taking us where we were going. But as the players come by, there's Mark Weir, there's Eden Lynch, there's Lewis MacArthur, and I've got to say, man, what an immaculate squad of players as well. Like very deeply handsome group of boys. Too old to get starstruck, right? Nearly 40, too old to get starstruck. But it was great, and then obviously getting to speak to the big man himself. Just a really good night, and I think that it's a force of personality what that club are doing. I think that's what you do. Everything that he's done over the course of the season has been a positive. So I always think it would be dangerous to give too much control to one individual, because if he goes, it's like everything will keel over. However, at the moment, certainly, a really good place and should be in good shape for the playoffs. I mean, they've guaranteed. Whether they finish third and fourth, that remains to be seen, depending on how the weekend's game going between them and Elgin City. But whether or not they're playing East Fife or whether they're playing against Alloa Athletic, you'd fancy them to go, and certainly the manager and certainly the players believe in terms of what they're doing. I think it was Big Eden I was talking to just about the level of preparedness that they are for games. He said, like, I think being at part-time level before, you pitch up, you do your training, you go up the road, you come along on the Saturday, but there he's going through the analysis, and he was saying himself he watches the games. Michael was saying he watches the games back like 3 or 4 times to understand. They've got cameras sort of all over the place at Meadowbank, so he can properly analyse them. And so when it comes to the players, they know exactly what's expected from them. And it's something I've wondered about this in part-time football. If you've got a manager who, like I say, doesn't necessarily need to work, or then that's a huge advantage that he can focus a lot of his time into the team, even though it's a part-time role himself. I think a lot of managers would treat it full-time. And I'm thinking like Gary Naismith, for instance, talk to players about the level of detail he's able to give them. You can only really do that if you've got the time you don't need a second job really to work on it.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to touch on that I thought was very funny was that jersey, Connor Young's signed strip that was framed. I mean, it was very big. It was quite. I would describe it as cumbersome. But when you kind of propped it up on the train, every time somebody walked past, they did look at it because it was very large.
Connor Young signed jersey.
Yes, and that's exactly what you said. So This is Connor Young's thing. So, no, to be fair, a few of them were very interested. There was a guy who sat down next to us that inexplicably brought a packed lunch, a very healthy packed lunch, an apple and some nuts. You don't see that very often on the train back to Glasgow at 12:15 at night. There was one other guy that was maybe from Haddington that was aware of. He was wearing a Haddington hoodie. He was aware of the show. He was quite interested in the sign top. I must admit, the other kind of 2 or 3 people that you mentioned that too seemed less interested. But regardless, you still wanted to tell them.
Yeah, the low point, if I had to pick a low point, it was when the prize draw. And they had scratch cards at the table. I scratched mine off, prize number 1. Was it a fix? I don't care. I was just delighted to but when he said, please stand up, make yourself known, stood up, I got booed when I went up to get the prize. The entire room, to a man, booed me.
You still got a big sign ship at the end of it though, so it's worth it.
Exactly. Straight into the snooker room. But no, a brilliant night. A club who, got a bit of a soft spot for. Great to see the players and great to meet the manager. And yeah, thoroughly enjoyed myself. But Shaughan, I'd kind of done this in the wrong order. I thought we'd speak about that last, but I'm too excited. I had to move to the top of the show. One thing though, corrections and clarifications. I don't like having to start the show with this, but Milli Vanilli were not vilified for the incident where their tape jumped at the live show. They were vilified because it was revealed that neither of them had sung on the record.
Well, that makes more sense, I suppose.
Yeah, so very important that we clear that up. I mean, we really want to get our Milli Vanilli lore correct on this podcast. So if any fans are listening, we apologise, and we're very happy to have amended that.
And I suppose on a similar theme, I got 2 DMs over the weekend to say that actually 3 people did escape at the end of the Great Escape.
Right.
I know. I suppose what I should have said was very few people escaped at the end of the Great Escape.
Yeah, you were too precise.
Yeah, and wrong. And wrong.
Yeah. What you should have done before you went on to record a View for the Terrace, you should have watched the entire movie back twice just to be on the safe side.
I googled it and everything. I reported it incorrectly, I suppose.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's listen. We all make mistakes. That's why we have corrections and clarifications to tidy up anything we might have got wrong. But listen, we've talked about us, our gallivanting with the superstars of the SPFL. Let's get right into the muck. And we'll start this podcast properly by looking at the race for the championship title. If you thought last week was a lot of fun, get ready for something bigger and more twisted this time around. Now, on Friday night, Falkirk travelled to Partick Thistle knowing that a victory would virtually guarantee them the title. Their goal difference is much superior to Livingston's, effectively an extra point. And despite going down to an early strike from Brian Graham, Scott Arfield equalised before the interval and Stuart Bannigan was set off after collecting 2 yellow cards. And from that point, it seemed inconceivable of anything other than a Falkirk victory. But they couldn't break down their opponents in that second half. Alfie Agyeman was sent off with 10 minutes to go, and then the coup de grace. Terry Abladi flicked in a header in the 96th minute to give Thistle the win. That meant that Livingston could draw level in points if they could get a victory at Hamilton Accies, which they duly did. 2 goals from Robin Muirhead and another from Teti Yengi gave them, in the end, relatively straightforward win. Both clubs are on 70 points, but as you mentioned, Falkirk remain top because of their superior goal difference. We'll start by looking at that match from Friday. Shaughan, Partick Thistle 2, Falkirk 1. What did you make of the game?
It feels like the continuation of a theme, I suppose, for Falkirk. When you look back at the last 5 games, 5 games. So it's been against the other teams in the top 6. So they blew Morton away. But other than that, they lost to Livingston late. But you could argue that they deserved more for that game. Likewise, their United match, they drew 1-1. Again, I thought they were the better team over the piece, conceded a late goal. The Wraith Rovers game, lost 3-1. We're winning 1-0 after 88 minutes. Again, you could argue we're the better team. And then certainly for this game on Friday night, I thought they were the better side and probably deserved more than 0 points. And I think if this had happened let's say it happened in January, for example, because I'm sure Livy went through a rough patch and maybe lost 3 or 4 games in a row, roughly that time. that gives you time to bounce back. I suppose the issue is, for almost all of this run, it's been a case of, right, we need 3 points or we need 4 points. But the longer this goes on, as much as you can now bounce back against Hamilton, if this had been, as I said, in January, there's far less pressure. But the fact that it's the last game of the season, my goodness, I think this could be it's been a tense week for the fans, and you wonder how the players deal with it this week, I suppose.
You tell a tense week. I tell you who looks a very, very tense man, John McGlynn. And it's very interesting because I was watched the Falkirk game on the television. We'll go into the nuts and bolts of that just shortly, and then watch the highlights back for this, and then obviously went and watched the Livingston highlights for this, and watched David Martindale's post-match interview. And the contrast between those two guys is pretty stark. You've got John McGlynn, he's doing a penguin impression. A lot of time he's flapping his hands up like that. And there's David Martindale, who we mentioned last week's show, didn't even mention winning the title in his post-match interview. Didn't even I don't even think he really mentioned it on this occasion as well. I think he just was, we know what we've got to do. We've got to go and win and hope it goes in our favour. But I think he is almost like resigned to finishing in second place and taking it for there. But McGlynn seems pretty antsy and is struggling to. I think he's struggling to try and explain what's happened. He's talking about individual errors that have crept in that weren't there earlier in the season. But I can completely understand, if you were a Falkirk fan, you would expect them to beat Hamilton Academical on Friday, because Accies, we're recording this on the Tuesday. They've got their hearing for their appeal of whether or not they get their points turned over, the points deduction turned over. What that means is that they could go into this game with something to play for, rather than just it's just a game of football to get through. But if I was the body language and the way the manager's coming across, that would transmit to me as well. I'd be a bit nervous about it too.
I noticed that as well. Excuse me. And you're right. So David Martindale, his post-match stuff was all, I think he literally said, I'm quite looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm quite looking forward to this Saturday. And I have no doubt that there will be an amount of tension. The fact that this feels like a kind of unexpected bonus, because I do think it was resigned to the playoffs, but at least they're going into it from a position of strength, I suppose. That probably isn't the best description, but you know what I mean. But you're right, McGlynn. Like there was a point about halfway through his interview. You're right. He keeps kind of slapping his thighs, and then he said something about the fact that Partick had maybe 2 chances, and to be fair, that's right. And he's describing the fact that defending for both was embarrassing. But then he's attacked by an insect, which is like the kind of worst possible timing, because it just looks, he kind of headbutts it. It's kind of a weird approach to try to get an insect away from his face. It's just that he's an awkward guy at the best of times. It was just poor timing. I did think at that point, that's it, Livingston have won the league. He's trying to headbutt a moth. But I do think there is, Andy Harrow said this. Maybe it was after the Falkirk game, or maybe it was before it, and he thinks that McGlynn is a really poor manager when it gets to the crunch times of the season, because he thinks he is such a worrier and such a panicker that he essentially kind of imparts that onto his players.
Yeah, like it transmits onto them.
And I don't know if you listened to Liam Henderson's interview.
No, I didn't get a chance to listen to that one.
That was quite interesting. Very honest, because he was asked the kind of usual stuff. Well, sore one to take. What do you put that down to, and so on and so forth. And he actually said there's, and again I'm kind of paraphrasing here. I didn't write down direct quotes, but more or less he said there's a lot of nervous players in that dressing room. He goes, there's a lot of young players in there. He goes, and it goes, there is a lot of nerves, and that can lead to individual errors, but we need to sort it out between us. And I thought that was quite interesting, and maybe not what I was expecting to hear. Like, you sometimes just expect to hear kind of generic sound bites, but I thought that was quite specific and quite interesting. But I do think it'll be quite. It's such a blow to concede that goal in whatever it was, 97th, 96th minute or whatever. I think that'll be difficult to get over for them.
It's become a thing now, though. Over the past 4 of the last 5 games, other than the Morton game, you've conceded late goals. And now it's a thing where going into that Thistle match, when Kyle Turner stood over that free kick at the end, I was watching it thinking, I really fancy Thistle to score from this, and not because like Kyle Turner's a decent at the ball. They've got decent attackers in there that can go for it, but just because Falkirk have chucked away advantageous positions from this stage over the last couple of games, and it proved to be. And I thought it was a really well taken goal from Obladi. You think perhaps it was a bit of a fluke, but
I thought so.
The way, but nevertheless, it's just for that to happen. It goes beyond misfortune, and this is now. We talked about the nerves and anxiety when the players get into these later stages of the game, and imagine if on Friday, say it gets to the stage where it's 70 minutes, it's one each. There's the goal. They're getting the scores coming in from Almonvale. Livingston are winning 2-0, so Livingston have moved to the top of the table. Or just say, because that's the fan, as a fan, what you'll be doing is you'll be spending the entire time on your phone. You'll be just looking in Flash Score for updates from Almonvale. I think it's going to be horrible going into it for them. And I'm on Friday night before the game, I'm going to Behind the Wall for Falkirk Daft. I've got a live podcast event. I'm really looking forward to it because I've enjoyed the times I've gone on. Like Ross and John seem like good guys, and it'll be good to get the chance to meet them and have a chat. I suspect it was booked as a bit of a victory lap, like go in there, have a couple of pints, and then off to the football to watch them win the title. I think it's going to be extremely anxious in there. So I'm not 100% sure what the vibe's going to be like. But I think certainly the Falkirk fans. I was texting my mate earlier today, and I said, "You'll beat Hamilton. You of course you'll beat Hamilton." But he's like, "Nah, I don't think. I think we're going to blow it." So it's just remarkable just how the season has taken such a turn. One of the things I was going to ask you as well, Scott Arfield, when he came into the club, he was interviewed and asked about, he said potholes. It's my job. I'm at the stage of my career where I am experienced enough to be able to foresee the potholes before they come, so they're not an issue. And I just wonder that we talked about the galvanising effect he's got on the team, but do you think Falkirk are a better side since Arfield's joined them?
I think in terms of the positives, he's probably adding. Bear in mind, you think about what Liam Henderson said.
Mm-hmm, that's why I'm asking that as well. I found that a surprising thing for him to say.
And so it feels like maybe there are some players that are struggling a bit with the pressure going into this kind of conclusion to the campaign. So in terms of leadership skills, you would imagine that he is a massive positive in terms of that. I think we kind of called it when he arrived in terms of that they needed a more clinical player, because certainly in terms of their forwards, they haven't necessarily had that this season. So I think, what is he on, maybe eight goals for the season and whatever it is, 12, 13 games. So that's a massive boon to them. What I'm not entirely sure, and Falkirk fans would know better than me, but in terms of watching them for 90 minutes against Ayr, watching them for 90 minutes, and to be fair, he doesn't play 90 minutes, which is starting to become a bit of a bugbear for Falkirk fans. But watching the whole game, Ayr, Partick Thistle and Wraith Rovers, I don't necessarily see him contributing a lot from open play other than being a fantastic finisher. And that's like, see, when we talk about somebody, all they do is score goals. Normally we're talking about a forward.
Yeah.
And that feels like it's fine. But I think when you have somebody who is maybe in the middle of the park, who you probably need a wee bit more out of, then maybe there is a kind of downside to that as well. So, as I said, Falkirk fans will know better than me, but based on the 3 or 4 games I've watched when it's been the entire game, it feels like there has been both positives and negatives to his involvement, I suppose.
The game where I went to see them against Livingston, to see it and when I seen Falkirk and Livingston in the flesh, I was quite excited to see him. Because obviously it's a guy who has had a sterling career playing at certainly a level that he's talent-wise, he's perhaps not consummate with his talent, if you know what I mean. But he didn't really do much. He didn't really affect the game. Certainly not in the same way like Stephen Kelly or Scott Pittman did. And certainly in this game against Thistle, taken off after, it was about 60 minutes or so.
That's generally when you're right, but it feels like when it comes to Arfield, there is a kind of cookie cutter when it comes to the substitutions, and he is very much a player that goes off it feels like he always goes off after 65 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not sure if that was the right call because the circumstances in the game, and I suppose this is a good opportunity to break it down. When the first half performance, I thought Falkirk were terrific in the first half, and it felt as though that when Arfield equalised, it was only a matter of time before they go on to win it by 3-0, 3-1, 4-1 maybe, just given the pressure. And there was points in the game, I think even in the build-up to Arfield's goal, where Thistle just couldn't clear their lines. They were quite clumsy, they looked quite tired in the way they were dealing with it. And I remember watching it saying, these guys will be desperate for half-time. When after Bannigan went off, I was thinking these guys will be desperate to go into the break with their advantage so they can just sit down, reset, reorganise and take it from there. And then when Arfield equalised, just thinking, well, that's what Falkirk's pressures deserved. It deserved a goal. It was a really nice goal as well, really well set up and from Ross McKeever to chest it down for Arfield, and a nice finish, as you've come to expect from Arfield since he's returned to the club. But the second half, I just never thought they got going. But likewise, I thought Thistle were excellent. And I thought Thistle were excellent, just so well organised and so dedicated to what they were doing. They left a hell of a lot out on the pitch there, just in terms of how they moved. But I thought with Arfield, I'd have kept him on because at least he gave them that measure of control. I think that McGuigan explained in his post-match interview that the thing was to give them a bit more tempo and try and break down the two banks of four as the game went on, but it didn't work. And I mean, it's easy to say, had it worked, you'd be like, well, it was a smart, it's one of those things. Had they taken off Arfield, they brought on, I don't know, Aguiman goes on to score the winner, happy days, everyone's delighted with it. But instead, it just doesn't work. And Falkirk Thistle actually got better as the game went on. Didn't necessarily create any chances, but Thistle, not just because they scored, but Thistle finished stronger, I felt.
Yeah, agreed. And it's funny because, like, if I'm saying that not that I'm necessarily right, but if I'm saying that the negative to having Arfield on the park is that he maybe doesn't get about the park as much as you would want him to, that isn't really an issue if you have 90% of the possession and the game is taking place in the opponent's half, which is ultimately what was happening on Friday night. This felt like the ideal opportunity for him to stay on the park longer, whether it's 75 minutes, 85 minutes or whatever, but to then bring on guys like Miller Thompson, who hasn't really made much an impact at all during his kind of short stint at Falkirk. Again, you can see why Falkirk fans are, over the last kind of week or two, have asked questions about McGuigan, more to do with his game management, I suppose, more than anything else.
Mm-hmm. But it was a bad start for Falkirk as well. There's Tom Lang, who has got a 2-year contract with the club that's going to take him there. Just really strong pressing from Aidan Fitzpatrick inside the penalty box. But it's just I think that for Falkirk do want to play the ball from the back, Lang's not necessarily the player that I'd want doing that. I think he's quite a meat and potatoes defender, and that's not criticism, because I think that's a great thing to do if you can just head and kick the ball. But if you want to play out from the back, there are perhaps different options you could have gone for, and it's a really poor touch in a terrible area. Great pressing from Fitzpatrick, but the ball rolls very kindly to the feet of Brian Graham to just sweep it into the net from Hogarth, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be interesting. But then from that point, Falkirk settled into the game really, really well, and certainly throughout that entire first half, other than the start of the half, I thought Falkirk were excellent in the first half, and they could have been. There's a great save Mitchell made. I think it was with his legs, or it deflects off his legs. A couple of really good saves that he made. That if it wasn't for him, Falkirk could have been really comfortable going in at the interval.
Yeah, I actually thought Falkirk were better 11 versus 11. Certainly created or fashioned better chances and worked David Mitchell a lot more when it was 11 versus 11. On Lang, I've always liked him, but I was surprised that they gave him a 2-year deal. I think the issue with Lang is, even he was at Wraith, and even when Wraith weren't doing very well, and whatever it was, kind of 6th, 7th, I think they finished in the championship. Now, I could be wrong, but I think at that point, that might have been the highest Lang had ever finished in his career in Scottish football. And my opinion at that point was, I could see why. Like, he was solid. You've described it as meat and potatoes. Totally agree. But it was rash, and it was kind of unrefined, I suppose. And in fairness, I think you could. One of the reasons that I think both of us thought that Falkirk would have a good season rather than a great season is that there are a number of players in that squad who have been okay at championship level or unproven at championship level. However, so many of them feels like they've kicked on to another level this season under McGuigan. So yes, Tom Lang could be better. They played a lot of football this season, so it's hard to gauge. But I did think that Friday was a good example of, I suppose, what he isn't good at. Just get rid of it. Like a lower league Amoruso. Just that game isn't for him, essentially.
Mm-hmm. But even before Langfield scored, I actually remember watching this and being like, how on earth have you not squared it? It's when Calvin Miller got put through and goal. Dylan Tate's running up with him, and he basically tries to shoot from out of an angle when it'd been so easy, just square it. And there's Dylan Tate's got the entire goal to aim at. Like, actually, at the television, going, what are you doing? Why have you not passed it?
And you can see why, because he had a really good season. But you're right, squaring it was obviously the clever thing to do. And I do feel a wee bit sorry for Miller, because he's had a good season, but that's now... Remember the Ayr United game? He had a chance where he was right through, and I think he blazed it over the bar. He had that opportunity on Friday night. And then, see, right at the death, I don't know if you were watching right at the end, but basically, James McFadden was asked for his man of the match. I think it was like maybe the 94th minute. Partick Thistle had a corner, and he went, can we wait to see what happens at this corner? Which I thought was an odd thing to do, because it's like, well, surely you already have a rough idea in your head, and whatever happens in this corner isn't going to impact on who's man of the match. But maybe it was very, very close between two or three players. Anyway, 94th minute, it gets cleared away. You presume that's it. Game's over at this point. Calvin Miller has the ball, I think, on the halfway line, and at that point, Alistair Lamont then presses McFadden for his man of the match. Well, it probably has to be Calvin Miller, especially the first half. I thought he stretched the Partick Thistle back line. Thought his first touch was great. Created chances, really bothered them. And he was literally in possession, as McFadden was describing why he should be man of the match. And then he gave the ball away. And from that point, Partick Thistle then got the free kick that they scored from. And as soon as he gave the ball away, James McFadden said, that's your fault that's happened, Al. And I'm like, well, again, I'm not entirely sure. It is Alistair Lamont's fault. Is it? Normally you give the man of the match award much earlier than the 95th minute.
Aye. The controversial, I suppose if there's a degree of controversy from the first half, it'd be Stuart Bannigan's two bookings. I thought that the first one was bad. It was quite a bad tackle on Calvin Miller, merited a yellow card. I thought he might have been a bit unfortunate with the second one. The second one looks like he was going to clear the ball, and I think it was Dylan Tate that he hits. And certainly the accusation, I think it was from Brian Graham in his post-match interview, was like Dylan Tate's an experienced boy. He knows when to go down. So he did mention that. Leanne Crichton said at half-time as well. She said she was really disappointed to see Dylan Tate get caught in the stomach, but then go down holding his face. She said that was pretty poor. I thought from one angle that the second booking was a wee bit soft. I thought when you saw it side on, it looked more like a booking. I suppose there had been other instances where Bannigan had committed a foul, so you could argue it was an accumulation. But there was a very short period of time between the first yellow and the second yellow. So you could argue maybe he was unlucky. But at the time, as soon as it happened, I went, he's off. So I thought it was fair enough. And what about Aguiman's red card, about the 80th minute? I mean, he cuts inside from the wing, he overruns the ball, slides in to try and correct his mistake, and I think it's Robbie Crawford that he catches. I think I might be in the minority here, so I don't think it's a red card. That's the first thing I would say. I do think I'm in the minority where I thought it was quite a bad tackle. Like I thought he caught him. I thought it was probably comparable to Bannigan's first yellow. I don't think it was a red by any stretch of imagination, but I did think it was a foul and not a good one. I didn't think it was a clever tackle at all. But regardless, I thought the red card was very, very harsh. Yeah, I think as well, you appreciate that at this level, the referee only gets to see it once. And the fact is, we've been able to watch it again and again and again with multiple camera angles. I thought it was a foul. I didn't think it was a foul. I thought a booking would have sufficed. I think a red was harsh. And I found it interesting that John McGuigan's saying that the referees even things up. Now, this was in his post-match interview with Falkirk TV. Now, I always think of when a referee evens things up, it's because he's made a mistake and very quickly wants to correct it. Like if you've sent someone off, and then a flashpoint happens. Right, I need to book the next guy off. And cumulative time, including the half-time break, there's about an hour between Bannigan going off and then Agyeman's red card. And I think that even when you get into the interval, like Bannigan's red card's all forgotten about. And so I don't understand why he thinks, oh Christ, I sent this guy off like 60 minutes ago. I need to even things up here. I thought it wasn't a great call, but I think McGlynn was just slavering at that point. He would think he was just struggling to explain himself.
The first time I saw it, like as soon as it happened, instantly I was like, oh, Agyeman could be in a wee bit of bother here. But I do think that I was watching it as it happened, and the reaction of who he tackled, the reaction of the Partick Thistle players around, and the reaction of the home fans. However, I suppose the referee has to rise above that. Like the referee has to be a lot better at me and putting all of those things out of his mind. I suppose he's human, but ultimately it was a bad call. But there wasn't a red card. Yeah,
I found it interesting with all the highlights on Falkirk TV. You basically get to the goal, Arfield's equaliser, and then it skips about 40 minutes just to sort of the tail end of the second half. But I did find that interesting, just that the Falkirk just looked like out of ideas. They seemed quite one-dimensional. And I saw on Twitter, I think it was I think it's the account Transfer Scotland. I think it's just a Green Up Morton fan fancy themselves about a content aggregator. But he was suggesting that Falkirk have become too predictable and need to change. And it was Mick Kennedy, the East Kilbride manager of all people, was like, so what, do you want McGlynn just to pitch up at training on Monday and just go do something completely different? It's like, for the players would think, this guy's lost his mind. You know what I mean? We wanted to completely change things. So I suppose that's it. It's, at this stage of the season, if Falkirk were to change, it's probably too late in the day to get a bunch of players to adopt something different. You just have to stick with what you've been doing. I think that's probably a sign of good management. I think a bad manager would be like, right guys, all that stuff we've been doing, we're going to do something completely different. We've got a whole new shape and tactics to learn, and we've got 5 days to do it. Paul, get the cones.
I mean, let's face it, it's worked okay so far. I just think there is certainly a ridiculous level of nervousness that they have to get through. If they can, I think they'll be fine. If they can't, then I think Friday night it'll be very, very difficult for them.
Now, Aidan Nisbet in the shower, his hair's coming out in clumps. It's bad, but it's fascinating. I think that, there's still a long way to go. If Falkirk draw against Accies and Livingston win, this would be the term's been used a lot. It's be an enormous bottling on Falkirk's part. This would be staggering if they allow this to happen.
Yeah, and again, I know I've harped back to it a couple of times now. Henderson says that as well. He goes, if we don't pull this off, we will be known for a very long time as absolute bottlers. You'd probably have to go back to Morton 0304 for anything that's even remotely approaching it. But this feels. It probably feels a bit bigger because, probably a wee bit more people are aware of it. Like, so many more games have been on the television. You have the kind of online aspect, so you have all these people kind of laughing about it as well. But you do have to go back a long, long time before you have anything that's reasonably similar.
Yeah, I just get into. I suppose all the factors you get to this stage of the season. And just the way that it's been done as well, all those last minute goals. But listen, they've got the Accies to play. I regardless of whether or not Hamilton they get a 5-point penalty and so it goes down for 15 points to 5 points. Suddenly they've got tons to play for. They could finish in 8th or whatever it is if they beat Falkirk. I just can't see it. Although I've got to say, last time they played each other, they drew 2 each. Am I right in saying? It took
Falkirk equalised really late.
Agyeman equalised late on, but even so, even when the circumstances, I can't see anything other than a Falkirk win.
Same. Although they did apply themselves reasonably well against Livingston. I thought Livingston played well for the middle of the game, but it was also a match that was bookended by Hamilton giving them bother at the start of the match. They probably should have took the lead, and I know Livingston kind of took the foot off the gas towards the end of the game, but they did give them there was a spell certainly where they bothered Livy.
Yeah, I certainly, when I watched back the highlights, I thought this Livingston looked like they're having a great time. Lewis Smith in particular, he was massive. I think he scored one, set up the other 2.
He was involved in all. So Robbie Muirhead scored 2.
That's right. One was a
Smith
save.
He was brought down for the penalty.
Yeah,
he had a shot that I think was poorly dealt with by Dean Liness that Muirhead tapped in, and then he assisted Teti Yengi. So he was involved in all 3.
Lewis Smith really enjoyed himself, but having read in Pine Bovril, they said it wasn't as straightforward as it would suggest. That Accies were pretty good in the first half, certainly up until I think the penalty was awarded. They had a number of chances, and at the end, John Cryer, the actor from 2.5 Men, and the Livingston goalkeeper had a superb performance in the goals. I mean, I think there's a save. I can't remember whose header it's from, but it's a great save just to turn it past the post. But Livingston certainly, and I know it kind of helps when you're 2-0 up and the team you're playing against are muddied, but they really seem to purr at that point. It looked as though a team, just all the one-touch passing, Smith in particular had a phenomenal game here, but all the one-touch passing, it looked like a team who were just like, they just looked so relaxed. I know I'm only getting this from watching set of highlights, reading a couple of comments on Pine Bovril, but just if you compare that to the anxiety from Friday night, where it's the team who are chasing it, there should be, I imagine Livingston should be the more anxious of the two, because they're the ones that, like, if we don't win here, that's us. Where Falkirk be like, well, we still have a bit of money in the meter to avoid this, And it's just that Martindale's post-match interview is as well. I love listening to David Martindale's post-match interviews. They're great fun, but just like he seems so relaxed and so easy with himself and so ease with the circumstances around him. I just think it's such an interesting contrast.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of. Who am I to disagree with David Martindale? But he's alluded to the fact that it's taken until now for his squad to bed in and to kind of gel. That's a long time to take to gel. I just think it's allowing the players a wee bit more freedom. I think they've been kind of safety first for the bulk of this campaign, and I think also having Robbie Muirhead as a focal point up front. I think they've tried Yengi to a lesser degree. I think they've tried Stevie May, but I just think Muirhead is far better at not necessarily bringing others into play, but he can do that, but just scoring goals, which Yengi and May have probably struggled with. So certainly there's that kind of goal scoring element that has maybe hindered them for the bulk of this season. But no, you're right. There's something. You're right. The purring is a good way to describe them. Whereas Falkirk are, I suppose, stuttering.
I suppose up next, Falkirk, as we mentioned, playing Hamilton Academical, Livingston playing Partick Thistle, and at the moment Falkirk have got a +8 goal difference on Livy. Basically, permutations. If Falkirk win, they win the division, and Livingston can win it. Basically, they need to better Falkirk's result. If Falkirk draw and Livingston win, they win the title. Likewise, if Falkirk lose and Livingston draw, then they win the title. But if you're who you fancying for it, Shaughan, on Friday?
I mean, logic tells you that Falkirk win. And you could easily see them being 2-0 up after 25 minutes. However, if that isn't how the game goes, and see how Falkirk fans are starting to become quite disgruntled about the fact that Arfield is leaving the field after 65 minutes. See if the game's tight and he leaves again at roughly the same time. I think the crowd turns at that point. So I'll still go for Falkirk, purely because of who they're playing. But I think it could be a very, very anxious 90 minutes. And if it gets to half time, for example, and it's all square, my opinion might change in terms of who's going to win the league at that point.
Yeah, can't wait. Friday's going to be absolutely class. Cannot wait for it. But I think that we've spoken about the championship for enough time there, and no doubt the next time we're on, we'll be speaking about the championship for absolutely ages as well, because it's going to be class. Friday is going to be absolutely super. But we'll drop into League One and we'll head to the Rex, where Alloa Athletic moved into the final playoff place with a come-from-behind victory against Montrose. Despite going behind to Owen Sturton's goal midway through the first half, Connor Salmon scored a great goal to draw them level before Luke Rankin grabbed the winner. And Andy Graham's team have now replaced Stennismuir in 4th place, while Montrose are in 8th and probably going to stay there between now and the end of the season. Shaughan, what's your thoughts on Alloa Athletic 2, Montrose 1?
I suppose I said that the Falkirk game is following a theme, but Alloa seem to do that as well. Like, is this the I think I read somewhere that they've now won 21 points from losing positions. And I felt sorry for Montrose, because I think based on the first half, I thought it looked excellent. Probably should have been more than a goal up. I think Andy Graham has, in terms of Connor Salmon, has maybe like the best super sub in the division. The fact that he is able to give Alloa whatever it is, 25 minutes, half an hour, whatever it is, but he can ruffle defences and both score goals on his own and create chances for opportunities for others. So I wouldn't say Alloa were lucky to win. However, on another day, the game could already have been by them before that comeback started, if that makes sense.
Yeah. That's I probably agree with a lot of that. I thought that, go by highlights, looked like particularly Blair Lyons, who's, I think he's had a pretty strong season overall. I think he cleaned up at the Montrose Player of the Year awards as well. He had a pretty good game. Sturton has proven himself to be a really good signing from Dundee United, and I think Callum Sandilands as well, coming on loan from Hearts. I'm not quite sure if he's what Hearts are looking for next season, but you'd like to think he's in a better place to go and compete for the team. Same with Sturton when he goes back to Dundee United. But I just think it's the goal that Salmon scored to bring them back into it. I thought this was a fantastic goal, and perhaps overshadowed elsewhere. We'll come on to talk about what was the best goal of the weekend, maybe the best goal of the whole season. Had it not been for Deshaun Golden, I actually think this might have been the goal of the weekend. I thought that it's really good to see, and I think it's quite interesting, like two lone players combining, where Charlie Dewar slips in Magnus Mackenzie, and it's a really nice ball in for Salmon to finish. I think we've spoken about it loads of times when it comes to Alloa. We talked about how important the loan signings were for them last season, and maybe this current crop haven't been quite as eye-catching as the likes of like Taylor Stevens and Ethan Sutherland and especially Bobby Wales. But I mean, the fact that Dewar and Mackenzie, from what I've read, I think they've generally been pretty decent for them. And setting up Salmon. I think Josh Gentles as well. I think that was Rico Kitongo when I was on the podcast with him a couple of weeks ago. He spoke really high of him. I think he's contributed. So it's good to see, maybe not as quite dazzling as their predecessors, but certainly have made an impact, and certainly had a big impact for Salmon's goal.
No, you're right, and they've have they been key to the fact that they may finish in the playoffs? Yeah, probably, but you're right, they just haven't been quite as eye-catching as the players from last season, and it's probably quite good because I think we're both fans of Andy Graham. You go back maybe 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Felt like he was under a wee bit of pressure, and now it very much feels like that's been alleviated. And obviously, if they can finish things off, not finish things off, but if they can end the regular season by finishing in the top four, it feels like a pretty positive campaign, I suppose, considering it's for a bulk of it hasn't felt like he's had everybody behind him.
Yeah, I think it would be probably. I'm not going to speak for Alloa fans. Wonder how they would see like a qualified. No, maybe a qualified. Just an outright success. Doesn't have to be qualified. The fact that I think if you'd have said at the start of the season, what do you expect from Alloa, and he said top four, and ultimately they got in there in the final day of the season, you'd probably think, well, that's probably just about right.
Yeah.
I suppose that the big criticisms from Alloa, certainly up until the last couple of weeks when they really hit their form, they were really good when they beat Stennismuir 4-1 a couple of weeks ago. Really impressive. That I think they were quite boring to watch. They were quite slow, quite unimaginative, quite easy to play against. And I think that even at part-time level, fans expect their team to be a wee bit stylish. And I don't think we were getting them from that. But certainly in recent weeks, what he's managed to unlock, and I don't know if it's I'm trying to think what I've read online, so forgive me if I'm passing off other people's comments as my own, but regular Alloa Athletic observers say maybe putting Luke Donnelly in a more withdrawn position, giving Luke Rankin a bit more game time, and he's a bit fortunate for the winner here, but he's proven himself over the course of the season to have scored match-winning goals. Stuff like that. Curtis Roberts coming back into the team to give him a wee bit more thrust. Now, all things like that have definitely made a difference, and they're on a bit of a crest of a wave at the moment, and I think they'll be really excited for the weekend's game. You know, they've got Kelty Hearts at New Central Park. There's a team that I've got nothing to play for. You would fancy them to beat Kelty Hearts and finish in the top four?
Yeah, very much so. And I know there's always this suggestion that, well, if a team has nothing to play for, then they can relax and they can just play their own game. And I totally get that. But I do think if Alloa play with an intensity and a kind of purpose, if you have... And I never want to say that a team's down tools, and I'm not suggesting that any team in a dead rubber would do that. But I do always think about the fact that if you're a football player and you know you can't get promoted, you know you can't get relegated, you make a load of sacrifices during your career, during the season, and you've got a holiday booked, a family holiday booked, for example, at the start of January. Do you really want to be going in for 50-50 challenges and you can potentially get injured? So I can understand how if a team has nothing to play for, then they maybe drop down a gear. So based on that fact, I do think Alloa will get the 3 points that they require.
Yeah, Stennismuir are at home to Dumbarton, but on current form, certainly you could imagine, I could actually see Alloa losing here and Stennismuir losing as well. You know, the way that
3-0 Dumbarton. They've been extraordinary the last few weeks.
The Stenny were apparently excellent against Queen of the South in the first half. I obviously wasn't there to do it. I was hanging out with former Scotland B cap Michael McIndoe instead. But my mates that were down for it said that it was actually, they watched the highlights back and they said they felt sick, missed a number of good chances. Just that it's not going Stenny's way at the moment, and hopefully things can change around. It does feel like a bit of a missed opportunity. But we're not here to talk about Stenny, here to talk about Alloa. And before the match as well, Kevin Colley presented with a jersey to celebrate his 500th appearance for the club. He didn't come off the bench there. He made his 500th appearance the previous week, but that's a phenomenal achievement. Absolutely phenomenal achievement. Even trying to think, even the guys that, like Paul Watson, for instance, who'd been at Montrose for 13 years, and I say only, but I think he made something like 347 appearances for them. Colley's made 500. I just find that's extraordinary.
How many seasons was that exactly? Can you remember, or did you notice?
No, I didn't. Sorry, I was the wrong way around. Sorry.
Because he must be. I mean, he must have pretty much stayed. I mean, we know he's good. We know he is always, if he's available, he's always going to be in the starting 11 or coming on as a sub. But he must have remained injury free for a lot of that, even if he's just been there 10 years, for example. So he must have stayed clear of injury and just been a high performer during his time at Alloa.
Yeah, I think he's 35. He's a lot older than I expected him to be. For me, when I think of Kevin Colley, I think, he must be about 29. No, he's not far off the same age as me. But I think he started off at Celtic, loan spell at East Stirlingshire, might be wrong. And then I had a season at Dumbarton. I think there was a lot of players that moved from Alloa to Dumbarton and then back again. But brilliant, great to see, and it'll be a long time before you see something like that repeated. I'm trying to think who must be not far off him. Scott Taggart, maybe, in terms of appearances.
Yeah, maybe.
The other thing to say about Alloa as well, Andy Graham, somebody I have a long time admired. And his post-match interviews never seems to be neither up nor down a lot of the time, and maybe that's a good thing. You know, when the team were doing well early in the campaign, never particularly got carried away. Even when they were going through that tough period, and as you mentioned, their questions were being asked of him, never seemed particularly down by it either.
No, I mean, I think he's literally said that on occasion, maybe after a win, where he's like, well, I don't want to don't get too carried away after a win and don't get too downbeat after a defeat. I mean, I think it might be one thing saying that in front of the camera, and actually maybe when you get home, maybe especially after a loss, I would imagine he goes over it for days and days. But no, you're right. I think he is quite a placid individual, although obviously you know him a lot better than me.
I've met him twice.
But that's a lot more than me.
Yeah, that's just 200 times, 200% more times than you have. Smashing big guy. Hope he does well. But for Montrose, I suppose quite a disappointing campaign is that certainly about halfway through the season you were thinking probably once they get their act together they'll get into that top four, they'll chance for promotion, but it never seemed to happen. And the fact that the season that they're going into this game here thinking if we don't get a win here and results go our way here, we could be finishing in 9th place.
Yeah, I mean, it has been disappointing. I mean, I suppose what remember we were at we were at that kind of summer event with Montrose, and the Stuart Petrie had said that that maybe they had to lower their expectations, I suppose, in terms of going into this season.
Yeah.
But that said, I still thought they had a decent squad, and especially when January came in terms of Sturton, and you think, well, maybe Whiting could be a decent signing as well. So I think they have a decent squad there, but it still feels like one that needs to be turned over. And even going into next season, I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. Petrie is it still feels like Petrie is very much the man for the job. But your concern for Montrose is it feels like they don't necessarily have the funds. Well, even if you look at their attendances, even by League One standards, they're not particularly high. So hopefully they can find funds from somewhere. Otherwise, generally when we go into a season, we think, Montrose will be there or thereabouts in terms of the promotion playoffs. But maybe that won't be the case going forward. And there's no reason. Like, you look at teams that have been in the Championship, like Arbroath established themselves there for a while. Brecon have been in there, obviously, like kind of direct Angus comparisons. So there isn't, over the last few years, there's no reason that Montrose can't break that ceiling, but it just feels like they have taken I suppose, a step or two backwards.
Yeah, I think it's a big summer for them. Hopefully Ian or Ross Campbell have seen somebody doing keepy-uppies down by the Orium that they fancy getting in for pre-season, something like that. I don't know how it works, but I hope so, because Montrose are a club I really like Stuart Petrie, like guys like Barry O'Neill. I like weirdly enough, on Instagram, next to Stennis Muir, most players I follow are from Montrose, which is strange. I suppose you spend enough time in their company, but fucking hell, God, I feel like a total star fucker today. Just talking about all these people that you've met and spent time with. Folk must be thinking, God, I remember the Terrace podcast before they sold out. I much prefer the Fowler's Flat days.
I like the fact that you're talking about a star fucker, and you're only talking about players of Edinburgh City, Montrose, and the Alloa manager.
I'm getting sort of like, well, there's Kirk Crichton, the Edinburgh City assistant manager, coming over to speak to us. Something, man, I hope that even no matter what happens with football broadcast and doing this podcast, if A View from the Terrace comes back and whatnot, I hope I never ever lose that enthusiasm. For just like hanging around football players. And not in a like a sort of a wag way, hope that one of them sleeps with me or anything like that. Not in that way, but just in a way where you just enjoy talking to people who play football and just finding out what it's really like.
See the fact that you, I know I've already mentioned it, it's the fact that you spent the summer interviewing people like Scott McTominay and Che Adams, but you were still excited by Mark Weir. I don't think you are going to lose that enthusiasm. That's my thoughts on the matter.
Genuinely, it's like, here's Ryan Christie, Stuart Armstrong, right? Let's get over it. Let's get it over and done with. There's Josh Grigor and his man Dan. Let's go and speak to them. Nah, never. Hopefully, I'll never lose it. But then I'd hate to think I'm beginning to tip into that age where just becoming a wee bit older than a lot of the guys. Like, for instance, like Eden Lynch, he's only 24. I'm thinking, God, I'm a lot older than him, and just be like one of those sad old guys that just wants to hang around. Like, if I start pitching up at like Meadowbank with a, can I please get your jersey top? And then lying and saying it's for it's for my son, then that's...
I do think you've been a bit harsh on yourself. I think there's a big difference between wanting to hang out with 24-year-old football players and just genuinely being curious about the season or how they've been doing or how they feel things have been going. There's quite a big difference.
Yeah, that's like, oh, Eden, I didn't expect to see you here, despite the fact I've been scoping out the property for the past 6 hours. There you go. There's an idea for a movie where someone gets invited along to a team's Player of the Year night and then tries to befriend all the players with horrifying consequences. You know that scene in Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, where he's going around trying to find everyone's ring and counting the number of diamonds on them? That, but like a horror movie.
And a lower league football team
and a lower league football team, and me instead of Ace Ventura. Need to workshop it, but there's an idea.
A kernel of an idea.
There's a kernel of an idea in there. But the big question, Shaughan, are Alloa going to finish in the top 4?
I don't want to be a nuisance in terms of the fact that you're a Steny fan, but I do think that Alloa will finish top 4 and Steny will just miss out.
Yeah, it's bad. I mean, Alloa hitting form at the right time. Stennismuir doing the complete opposite. You're
right though. I watched the highlights. I'm sure you did as well. And if it wasn't for Ross Stewart, they may have got something from that game. I actually thought Steny looked decent.
Yeah, there's nothing we got wrong this season. I thought that
Ross Stewart.
I think we were very. If I'm going back to the big lower league podcast, I think that we had said that. Yeah, I think everything that Peter Murphy was doing was like, wow, those are really good signings. Until Ross Stewart, I think every time I've seen him, I think he's had a really good season. Ross Stewart, mostly.
Probably one of his better signings. Well done, Grinning Pete.
Hey kids, listen, if you don't eat your carrots, Grinning Pete won't give you any gifts. Funny, actually, I mentioned about my mates having gone down to Palmerston. They did it last season for Stranraer. They dressed up, they went in fancy dress, and they did it again this year for Palmerston. So I think it's become now, it's the second time it's happened. I think it's going to be a tradition where you dress up for the penultimate away day of the season. And there were some fantastic costumes in there. One of my mates went as Joe Exotic, Tiger King, remember him? And somebody else dressed up as a tiger. One of the boys got a Queen of the South tracksuit and a Peter Murphy mask on and went as Grinning Pete himself.
What were you going to go as if you hadn't been invited to an Edinburgh City end of year do?
I was going to go as Bret Hart.
Wow.
Yeah, I was going to I went as Kane last year, so I just went to the same company who did the Kane. So who else you got? Bret Hart. He's got long hair. Yes, please. So I had to. I mean, when we got the offer to go to Edinburgh, I thought I want to go to Edinburgh.
And how did that suit look? I'm trying to think what Bret the Hitman Hart used to wear.
A pink singlet.
And did it show? Does it show? Is it plunging?
It's plunging down the back. If I bent over, you could have seen inside Mars.
My goodness. Did it have the? Because he had kind of wrap around kind of purple shades.
Yep, came with
that seems class. And did you? So did you have the outfit?
Yes, I bought it. I didn't put it on. I didn't want to spoil it. So it was just when the opportunity came up to go to Edinburgh, I thought I'm gonna do that.
Well, that's good that you bought it rather than hiring it because you can wear it. You can wear it next year.
Oh no, I've returned it. Got my 44. Yeah.
So you kept the receipt.
I was off Amazon, so it was like 44 quid. So that's just next season when it comes. It depends what I'm doing with my hair. I'm thinking of cutting it off, but that's a discussion for another day, Shaughan. Nobody listening to this podcast gives a tinker's cuss about what I'm doing with my.
You'd be surprised. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, there's another idea for a film. It's basically it's the sequel to the guy who stalks Edinburgh City team. It's a guy who stalks podcasters, and somebody goes into the trash and steals the bun of hair that's been cut from me and starts walking around the house.
That sounds like quite a short film.
Well, we need to workshop it. These are just general ideas. Like Silence of the Lambs. Just imagine if somebody come. Here's an idea for Silence of the Lambs. It's about a guy who goes, "Hello, Clarice." You'd be like, "Oh, that sounds shite. You need to. That's a really short film." And the guy's like, "Well, aye, but it's just one bit of the film."
I know, but I'll be honest, I do think that the initial idea for Silence of the Lambs is probably a fuller idea than what you've given us for the podcast stalker.
I don't know. Maybe. Thomas Harris just heard somebody go, "Hello, Clarice," in quite a saucy way and just think, hey, hang a second, a kernel of an idea there.
It has to start somewhere. And I tell you, I was going to say, the celebrations will be starting somewhere for Peterhead. That's an absolutely atrocious link. Absolutely honking. We're going to finish by dropping into League Two, and so much happened in the division over the weekend. It's a bit of a grab bag, this, but we have to say an enormous congratulations to Peterhead, the League Two champions. Yeah. They won the title after a 1-0 victory over East Fife at Balmoor. Peter Pollock got the only goal of the game.
And I think this was perhaps the biggest game of the SPFL season so far, just in terms of what was on riding on it, because East Fife could have got to the top of the table and ultimately won the division had they got victory here. Well, Peterhead got the win. East Fife can't catch them. They'll be playing League One football this season. And as we mentioned at the top, East Fife will be playing Edinburgh or Elgin in the playoffs. Shaughan, thoughts on Peterhead 1, East Fife 0?
It didn't look like the best of games, but then maybe we should have expected that, considering what was riding on it.
Do you reckon? I was watching. I've actually thought the opposite. Only going by the highlights, but I thought that Peterhead were popping the ball around really comfortably here. I think there's a lot of time in these games where it's nobody wants to get in the ball because nobody wants to make a mistake. But it looked as though the players were enjoying themselves, still taking risks. Like a bit of good interchanges and rotations there. I thought Peterhead, only in the sort of the 6-minute highlights, looked pretty good.
No, you're right in terms of I thought Peterhead looked the better side. It felt like East Fife maybe didn't really turn up. I thought Alan Troughton had that chance with the poor pass back. Didn't deal with that very well.
I think Kieran Dunn looked up and saw Alan Troughton and thought, fuck it, let's just pass it anyway. You had to watch it a couple of times thinking, has he just not looked? But I think he might have looked directly at Alan Troughton and then passed it, tried to pass it to Stuart McKenzie anyway.
I can only imagine how relieved Dunn was, because he actually looked like he had his head on his hands, like as if, that's it, we're a goal down here. So he was very relieved. But see the fact that somebody like Nathan Austin, and I know his season has kind of tapered off to a degree, but he had such a good finish against Stirling Albion the other weekend, and East Fife in general were so good against Stirling Albion, albeit Stirling were absolutely dreadful against Clyde, so maybe that explains why East Fife looked so good against them. But no, I just felt like East Fife never got going, and as much as it didn't look like it was a humdinger, I did think that Peterhead were worthy winners, I suppose.
Yeah, and I thought that coming into this that they'd win this match. I think we had a bit of debate on last week's podcast and then subsequently in a view from the terrace about who would win this match, and I think it was where perhaps, or certainly you were a bit alarmed about just how poor Peterhead had looked against Elgin. They lost 4-0. I think it was 3 goals in 8 minutes. They went down. Just how uncharacteristically brittle Peterhead looked there. And I was listening back to Jordan Brown's post-match interview where he said it was the worst performance the club have turned in years, certainly the worst performance of the season. And just thinking, that's not going to happen again. That's not going to happen again. The players will get their arses booted. Or the players, I think there's players in that club that they'll be able to boot their own arse. They don't really need anyone to do it for them. And then it'll come to be like, right, we've got that out of the system. A bad defeat, your worst performance this season. It's what happens next that really counts. I'm thinking, weirdly enough, although maybe a slightly earlier stage in the season, but last year Stennismuir getting beat 6-1 by Clyde at home, and then following up the week after by beating Bonnyrigg, which ultimately proved to be the game that won the league. The stakes were obviously a lot higher for this match between Peterhead and East Fife, but it's the same thing. Worst performance of the season, narrow victory that ultimately wins you the division.
And yeah, I mean, I didn't disagree with anything you said. I just thought it was probably easier said than done. And the fact that Jordan Brown said, maybe I'm misremembering here, he might have said it was the worst performance of their time at the club rather than just this season. And it's like, my goodness, you've to plunge those depths and then to go in off the back of that kind of performance into a massive game against a team that has their backs up, who will probably have a massive travelling support. I think it did take 400 or 500 up to Peterhead, presumably on a high. So I kind of wondered about it, but ultimately, you were right. Peterhead looked far better on the day, and I fair play to them.
I really like Jordan Brown. I really like listening to him when he's been interviewed. I remember, again, not to talk about Stenny, but last season was after we beat them 2-0 in a midweek game, and listening to his post-match interview, and maybe it's because you want to hear somebody praise your team for how well they've done, particularly as an opposition manager, but just everything he said about the game I thought was spot on. And then having seen the subsequent Peterhead games, his comments on them, they really marry what I've seen. Maybe it's just because somebody agrees with me. Maybe that's why I like him as much as I do, rather than thinking like I'm being critically challenged or anything like that. But I just think he comes across well. I know that there's perhaps the bias that it looks identical to Joe Sked, which obviously helps. But you know, I just think I find him an interesting guy to listen to, and I'm pleased for him. Don't know as much about Ryan Strachan, although they've been at the club broadly the same length of time. But no, I was really pleased with them. I thought the goal here, obviously a degree of fortune, and it's certainly a degree of misfortune from East Fife's perspective, given the fact they couldn't clear it. But it was a composed finish by Peter Paul. It's certainly arriving at the right time. So I think he actually maybe starts the move. Am I right in saying that he starts the move and then just sort of ambles his way into the box, and then he's at the right place at the right time to finish about 8 yards out, I think it is.
Yeah, and I mean, it was Cammy Smith that set him up. So I suppose that was the two players that every now and again, and this is another example of it, Peterhead will have players that you think either they are splashing out on those players or they are the beneficiaries of where they are geographically.
Yeah, I think so.
And I just think you're right. In terms of Paula and Smith, those are two of the better players in the league, and the fact that they combined for the goal that sealed the division, that sealed the title. Sorry. In terms of Jordan Brown and Ryan Strachan, I thought it was quite interesting. I hadn't understood the quote that Peterhead put. And it was only when it was, I think, explained, there was some context given by, was it the Blue Tune podcast or whatever it was?
That's right, right.
Essentially, the quote was something like, young players moving from playing into management have no chance, something along those lines. And I was like, that's a strange quote, but regardless, fair play. And it actually came from, I presume it was Dick Campbell on an Open Goal podcast.
Aye.
And he was basically saying, if you're moving immediately from playing into management or being a young manager, you've got pretty much no hope. And the fact that I suppose you have Arbroath, who have two prodigies, young player managers winning the League One title, and then Peterhead, who were up against Dick Campbell, winning the division with the same scenario in League Two, was very, very funny. So I did enjoy. Eventually, once I'd figured that out, I did enjoy Peterhead's tweet.
I'd like to hear from Dick Campbell in this instance after the match.
I was a wee bit disappointed at that. Somebody said that he was in the bar after the game and he was excellent company, which is great.
Fair play.
But you're right. I would like to have heard something from after the game. So like Ian Campbell was there and stood up and kind of said that he didn't think that the East Fife had done particularly well. I think that did he mention they thought the goal should have been a free kick to them. Certainly Ollie Anderson on commentary did. Can't remember, but regardless, I agree. I was hoping to hear something with Dick Campbell afterwards, and was kind of surprised that we didn't.
Yeah, I thought given the circumstances for that match, I think it would have been appropriate to have heard from him rather than his brother. But regardless, how do you think that? Oh, sorry, just one thing I've got on my notes there. At half time, Peterhead take a 1-goal lead in, and there's the stadium announcer playing "Glory Days" by Bruce Springsteen over the tower. I'm like, whoa, hold your horses! Stick Dua Lipa on. Stick some generic chart music on. Do not tempt fate by playing that kind of music.
Did you see on a kind of similar note, did you see the mascot? See if I'd been a Peterhead fan at that game, I'd be like, well, I said the game's over. The mascot, I don't know if it was his birthday or if he was on a stag do, but he was kind of dressed as a clown and wearing a skin tight Peterhead strap. I'm like, come on, this is not the time or place to have a fun mascot.
You don't want somebody like a 50-year-old in a birthday party. No. Give us a local kiddie. And we'll be happy with it. I tell you what, I did really like, because I actually put in my notes, because the pitch invasion at the end is really it dribs and drabs. You know, like normally if you have a pitch invasion, for that occasion, everyone's down the wall, everyone's just waiting for the full-time whistle. But it just seemed to be a little gate opens and some little kiddies run out to join in. And I think as soon as one person runs on the pitch, please return to your seats or the trophy presentation cannot continue. It's like, hold your horses. Again, hold your horses. Just let people enjoy themselves and then send them out. But what I did really like, and I was proper like beaming at it, they show the players all getting their medals. They pick up the confetti cannon, go off. Everyone's lifting the trophy at a great time, and then all the kiddies run back onto the pitch. I thought that was fantastic, absolutely superb, absolutely loved it. Absolutely, that's what it's all about. I mean, the wee boys running, and they'll remember that for the rest of their life, getting to see their team lifting the title.
It wasn't just wee kiddies that ran on when Steny won the league last year. Put it that way.
It was old men with long hair. There was one more thing to say about this, watching the highlights, because they'd obviously, who was filming this match for Peterhead. They positioned a camera like smack bang in the halfway line so they get all the players going up and getting their medals and lifting it. There's an old boy in a Peterhead bonnet that sort of accidentally walks into frame, and then somebody has to grab him, and he looks at and he realises what he's done before disappearing again. Really, really funny. Really funny. How do you think? I mean, you obviously assume there's going to be a load of players will be coming in over the summer. How well do you think Peterhead will do next season?
I think if they, I've already mentioned actually that I think they couldn't win the league. I still stand by that. But I think if they recruit reasonably well, which I still think is easier said than done because of just the location in Scotland, I suppose. It's not as if it's going to be I can't imagine they're going to have too much more money through the gate in terms of travelling fans, for example. However, I think if they can manage to recruit reasonably well, then keep the core of what they already have, add to it another 3 or 4, then I think maybe they could push for top 4.
I think it's a strong spine that they've got, which really helps. And I think that Stuart McKenzie, good goalkeeper, proven himself to be a good part-time goalkeeper with Cove Rangers. Jason Brown's a good defender. Dylan Forrest, really excited to see how he does at the step up every time. I'm very, very full of praise for him. But then there's the guys like, in fact, it should be no bother for them. Guys like Cammy Smith and Peter Pollitt and Kieran Dunn to all step up. Andy McCarthy, he's played at that level in the past. Mm-hmm. I think they can have a really good season next year.
Yeah.
I think they'll do it. Maybe another striker. Someday I think that Kieran Shank's a good player. Oliver Quality's coming in out of the team. Rory McAllister, maybe a bit of a fading force, but certainly he's got that experience and that know-how.
I think the suggestion is that McAllister may be signing for something in the Highland League next season. I think he may be on his way.
Okay, well, fair play. If he does go, I'll say it again. McAllister's still the best striker I've seen since I've been watching lower league football. So whatever he does, good luck to him. As for East Fife, how do you think they'll get on in the playoffs? Depends who they're playing. First of all,
I don't think it's quite as like you've seen examples in the past. Raith Rovers, for example. In fact, I think the anniversary of that was maybe yesterday or the day before. So when they lost on the last day of the season, when Ayr won the league, Raith lost it at home to Alloa. And you kind of knew at that point that they were never going to get themselves up for the playoffs. It started maybe on the Tuesday. Like they maybe went like Saturday, Tuesday. I do think that East Fife is as tough as this will be to take. They still have Saturday's game, then the playoff starts. So I think they've still got a wee opportunity to get themselves back up for it. I probably do fancy East Fife for the playoffs. It was funny talking to Ali at the weekend. He really fancies Edinburgh for it. I can understand why, but I just think if East Fife play well, then they win those playoffs. I can see them beating Annan, and they are ultimately the second best team in League Two. So I play well. I think they'll do it.
Edinburgh City for me, obviously. And I suppose it's the thing, if Stennismuir don't finish in the top 4, then I know who I'll be going to watch in the playoffs. Hopefully, it's ideally Edinburgh City against Annan, and I get to go to my favourite ground to watch Edinburgh play. Like to start to see a nice summer's night watching football at Gallowbank. I don't think there'll be a better place to go and watch it. Where a team like you want to see it. Oh Christ, I quite like Annan as well. Two teams that you quite like, just be able to play at Gallowbank. That's perfect. So, but let's be honest, I'd much rather Stennismuir make it into the playoffs. It's a big thing. Thinking, could Stennismuir go up on current form? Probably not. You'd probably fancy Queen of the South or whoever finishes Airdrieonians at the moment. As things stand, you'd fancy them to go up. But I think it's just a big thing about finishing in the top 4 rather than not finishing in the top 4. Regardless of how you perform in the playoffs, getting there is, I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose it's like I don't like people that follow Premiership clubs talk about top 6.
Yeah, exactly. Same thing.
I suppose it's the equivalent of that. And even if you, as a fan, don't think that, I want Raith to finish top 4, even if they did, I don't think they're going to get promoted. But regardless, it's an extra couple of games. It's something to be excited by. It gives you something to aim at. So it's our equivalent of the top 6, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. Now, there's 2 other things that happened in the lower leagues, I think. In League 2 that's worth touching on. What will we go with? We'll go, first of all, we'll go to New Dundas Park, where Bonnyrigg could be on the cusp of maybe the greatest success story of this. No, let's say maybe it will be the greatest success story of the season if they manage to pull this off. They beat the Spartans 2-1, courtesy of a 96-minute winner from Aaron Arnott. And that means they are now within 2 points of Forfar Athletic going into the final game of the season. At one point, we thought, well, that's it, finished. They were 7 points behind, but they've won their past 2 matches. Well, Forfar have only picked up a point. All to play for going into this weekend, which could be massive for the club.
Yeah, it was interesting listening to. So I watched Bonnyrig's highlights. Didn't see Edinburgh Forfars until kind of later this afternoon. And again, I know we keep harking back to it, but Ali was saying it was interesting watching Edinburgh Forfar.
Yes,
in terms of how Forfar played the game. Mm-hmm. So you almost felt like Forfar. It was almost like the word how they managed the game via Jim Weir. It was like they had 1 year on Bonnyrigg Spartans. So it was like they didn't really go for it until Bonnyrigg went a goal up after 75 minutes. Over the piece in terms of the Edinburgh game, I thought Forfar looked like they were okay, but I could understand where Ali was coming from. It looked like they had kind of the handbrake was on. It kind of felt like for spells of that game. Then it was interesting. They said that you could tell that Forfar kind of relaxed when Spartans got that equaliser. And I suppose when there's only 5 minutes to go, 4 minutes to go, you think, right, well, that's absolutely fine. That's it done. Bonnyrig's going to finish 10th. We're going to be fine. And again, it looked like that Forfar relaxed. However, at New Dundas Park, Bonnyrigg just went for it again. And fair play, I thought it was a really good finish from Aaron Arnott and brilliant scenes for that last minute goal.
I've got to say though, you say it's a great finish. I thought the way he moved into space, it was like somebody walking down a supermarket aisle who's moving out the way of a trolley. I
thought it was really cool. I thought it was a really cool finish, considering what was at stake, the fact that it was 1-1, the fact it was the 96th minute of the game. I thought Porteous's assist and Arnott's finish was really good.
However, it defended abysmally. It was almost like, because you could see Porteous getting the ball, and then like when the defender it was by, so oh excuse me, it just sort of like toddles by him and gets the ball fed. It's a good finish and it's a good pass, but he was basically just allowed just to go past them like they were invisible. So I thought that was poor defending from Spartans' part, but that's their season come to an end. So I suppose disappointing for Spartans. You'd always look for them to build on the previous year, and they haven't done that, and they've been overshadowed by their rivals, I suppose. Play each other on the final day of the season as it happens. But the big game, Shaughan, it's Stranraer versus Bonnyrigg and Forfar versus Stirling Albion on the final day.
I could see both teams winning this game, winning their respective games, which obviously would mean that Bonnyrigg finish 10th. The reason I'd probably say that about Forfar, not because they were particularly impressive against them, but although I thought they'd done okay. But you look at Stirling Albion against Clyde. I don't know if you watched their highlights. It could easily have been 4 or 5-0 at half-time, and if it had been 6, 7, 8 at full-time, my goodness, it was such a dominant performance. I mean, Stirling Albion were very much not at the races, and if they perform like that again at the weekend, and I know that Forfar don't have a lot of goals in them, I would fancy Forfar to win. And I suppose similar-ish. Not that I think that Stranraer have quite such a poor performance in them, but you look at their squad at the weekend, like they were very much down to the bare bones. You would imagine that'll still be the same at the weekend, so I wouldn't be surprised if Bonnyrigg win, but I do think Forfar will do the necessary as well, which means that Bonnyrigg finish 10th.
Yeah, I think it'd be a damning indictment on Forfar if they do chuck this and do finish bottom, because you keep remembering that Bonnyrigg have had that points deduction. Yep. I mean, there was a stage where we were saying, well, there you go, that points deduction hasn't made a difference. And now we're back to this year thinking, oh Christ, if only Bonnyrigg didn't have that points deduction. So it would be a disaster for Forfar to finish bottom. Where I think that Bonnyrigg, certainly if I'm going to use Amy Canavan as my barometer for where the support, I think a lot of them had resigned themselves to it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think any of us saw this turnaround coming. So over the last kind of 2 or 3 games, they've been very, very good, and kind of fair play to Johnny Stewart. It feels like he's managed to eke something out at the last possible moment, because they couldn't have left it any later, and maybe they have left it too late. Who knows? But it's been a it's went down to the final game, which I didn't expect, whatever it was 3 weeks ago.
And it looks like, well, certainly there's a second leg to follow, but it looks like East Kilbride will be the team. They're playing a very, very comfortable 4-1 win over Brora Rangers at K Park in the first leg of the League 2 playoff semi-final. I saw that East Kilbride went 2 goals up through Nathan Flanagan. Jordan McGregor got sent off and Brora pulled one back, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to get a bit tasty. But then it didn't get tasty at all, and you end up spitting the sweetie out because East Kilbride just won it, and they got a fourth goal in injury time. So that looks like you can imagine them going up and maybe like a draw or a narrow defeat or something. But I can't see Brora overcoming that kind of result.
No, and you're right. I haven't seen anything from it. I don't know if there's footage available. I haven't even looked for it, to be fair. But you're right. When I saw the kind of updates coming through, I did think to myself, even if Brora hold on to 2-1, gives himself a real chance in that second leg. But no, that's all over now, surely. And considering there was, myself included, a lot of people that thought that Brora would give East Kilbride a really good game. I think more than most seasons, I kind of fancied whoever finishes 10th to give East Kilbride a decent game. But now, based on that first leg on Saturday, I'm maybe not so sure. I think whoever finishes 10th is really going to have to up their game to defeat, presumably, Kilby.
We said that last season.
I know, but like I thought
it's not going to happen twice.
I just thought that this season's Bonnyrigg or this season's Forfar maybe had a wee bit more about them than last season's Stranraer. Mm-hmm. But maybe this season's East Kilbride have a lot more about them, I suppose.
Yeah. But the times like seen East Kilbride in the flesh was back in January against Queen's Park in the SPFL Trust Trophy semi-final. I thought they were really good. Ultimately lost the match 6-2, but that was an extra time and they ran out of puff by that point. But certainly for the best part of the match, they really gave them a good game. But we'll finish up, Shaughan. We'll finish up by talking about Deshaun Golding's goal for Elgin City and their 3-0 win with Stranraer. I'm sure everyone's seen this. It's been doing the rounds on social media. Picks up the ball about 30 yards from his own goal.
Yep.
Beats 3 players, with a tremendous bit of skill, take away 3 players, cuts inside a 4th, and as a low finish here, just a phenomenal goal. Big Duncan Mackay was there to see it, and that must have given him a giddy thrill.
It was great. The piece of skill that it was like a kind of ongoing piece of skill. It was almost like 2 or 3 pieces of skill that eventually kind of pirouetted them away from the three players on the kind of left hand side, just inside their half, I think. Then, as you say, he kind of slalomed along to the penalty area, and then when he just kind of rips off his shirt, and there's his kind of six pack. Yeah. A very impressive thing to see, both the goal and his physique, I suppose.
I liked Craig, with the 3 players, it was Scott Robertson tries to grab him by the collar and misses. Then Ryan Edgar, who I think gave the ball away in the first instance, comes over. And then Craig Ross comes over and falls on his arse. And it looked like a Three Stooges sketch where they're trying to do something, just make it worse for one another. Just imagine them all like they try to rescue a cat out of a tree and the cat jumps out and they're all just hanging from a tree. So it was good. The only thing that I did find interesting was, see if a teammate, imagine if I'm playing and your mate scores a goal like that, sprinting over to him, like saying, I can't believe you just done. There weren't that many people sprinting over towards Deshaun Golding.
Are you suggesting that Deshaun Golding isn't that popular in the Elgin dressing room?
It's just an interesting observation, Shaughan. I don't know what his standing is within that team. If they make fun of him behind his back, they every time he walks by, somebody pretends to cut his bun off like that. I don't know. I'm just surmising. I just thought, because I've seen when players score amazing goals, it's the sort of thing that prompts the entire team to sprint after him. But there was one player I couldn't see who it was from the distance, but one player was just sort of like walking towards him. I think, how often do you see goals like that scored? I mean, I'm not just at this level, but in Scotland, very, very rarely.
No, that's interesting. I must admit, I never thought of that. So, yeah, perhaps you're right.
Where do you think this ranks in the great lower league goals of the season?
Oh, it has to be I'd have to think about it. It has to be up there, doesn't it?
Yeah, I was thinking, off the top of my head, Corey O'Donnell's goal for Stennismere against Montrose.
Yes.
I mean, it's an amazing goal. It's you see, it's a beautiful goal with that touch and finish, but you see long bangers like that not frequently, but you have seen in the past. You don't see goals like Golden's very often.
Yeah, no, that's true. In terms of important goal, like Muirhead's free kick against Ayr, although Scott Brown thought the keeper was at fault.
Oh, Dylan Easton's goal was against Ayr United.
Oh, yes. Lewis Stevenson's against Hamilton.
Oh, was that the one that sort of takes us? Oh, that was class. Aye, that was really, really good. Aye.
But no, goal thing, I suppose it's hard to compare because they're all different. But in terms of the skill and the ability to dribble past players, I don't think there has been a similar goal this season or a similar good goal this season in the lower leagues.
No, that's a fair point. So yeah, who do you think is the goal of the season contender? Please let us know on the Discord and amongst all the muck that goes on in there, or just through Twitter. Either way, we're fine. But Shaughan, I think that'll probably do us for the time being.
I think so. That's acceptable, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We hope you've learned something and enjoy yourself. Effectively like a lower league version of Sesame Street. You like Bert and Ernie, actually, in that regard. You would be you've got a more sort of like the head shape, so you'd definitely be the Bert of the two.
Or maybe the two old guys in the box that just look
over
and moan.
They were Muppets. They weren't Sesame Street.
I've totally mixed that up, haven't I?
God, folk will be listening from what an asshole getting Sesame Street and Muppets mixed up. Oh my God, that is so embarrassing. But Shaughan, we are going to go off and record a Patreon episode. We're going to be looking at the nominees for the PFA Scotland Player of the Year across the 3 divisions. We could have done it last week when the nominations were announced, but nah, we had a laugh about it. Oh, do you remember when Stuart Petrie played in Hong Kong for a little bit? That is what a laugh that was. Patreon.com/Terrace Podcast. Hours of premium content for as little as £2 a month. There's going to be one more round of games before the playoffs. Hopefully we get a chance to cover them at some point. I don't know how we'll do that, but we'll definitely work something out. But please enjoy your football. But unlike that old boy who walked in front of the camera at Peterhead and completely ruined it for everyone, please do so respectfully. Thank you.